Welcome everybody to the second virtual Rust meetup of Rust Zürisee. I'm very excited today that we have two talks today about auditing using cargo or checking code using cargo. So for those of you who are new to our virtual Rust meetup, if you just drop by here in the Twitch stream, you can either chat in the Twitch chat to your side, or we also have a matrix chat, which is linked on the event page. So feel free to discuss there, ask questions there. We will collect all questions during the meeting, and we'll then have the speakers answer them at the end of their talks. For people who want to see each other in person after the meeting, we're also going to have a jitsi room for people to hang out afterwards. But yeah, during the talks, feel free to use the matrix chats for any discussions. So just a few things. This talk all these talks are also going to be recorded, so we will upload the recording to YouTube later on. And I also should mention that while I'm the person speaking here, this meetup is actually being mostly managed by Danilo in the background. So he's the person doing all the audio mixing and video mixing and setting up the live stream for us. So thanks a lot to Danilo for doing this, and to my co-organizer Stefan, who has also been involved in promoting this meetup quite well. So yeah, like I've said, we have two speakers today. One is Chris and one is Tony. The first talk today is going to be by Christian. He is going to talk about cargo-crev. So if Christian is ready, we can hand over.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Hello.
Christian, go at it.
Thanks for having me here. My name is Christian, and I'd like to introduce to a tool called crev or cargo-crev, which would make all our lives much easier when it comes to dependencies and trust in them. I'll introduce this tool. I'd later on like to invite you to participate, and I'll be posting installation instructions on the Matrix channel. So if you'd like, you can just fire them off so that you can afterwards basically follow everything that I'm doing, that I'm showing live, because it takes a while to install. So without further ado, what is this all about? The problem of dependencies. If you've ever had any larger cargo project, a Rust project, and looked at your dependency tree, for example using the nice cargo-tree command, then you will have noticed lots and lots and lots of programs. So of crates this is depending on. And this is not only the ones that you're directly depending on, this is the ones that your dependencies are depending on, and this easily goes into the hundreds. Now, the JavaScript ecosystem has been as nice as to show a few of the problems that are involved in having so many dependencies and having very small pieces of code in their own packages. cargo-crev will not solve the issues that were had with, for example, LeftPad, where the package just vanished and then everyone's build systems suddenly broke, because Cargo has its own features there that will mitigate those problems. But the problem remains that there is lots of code in there that you don't necessarily trust yourself, or that you haven't reviewed, or that maybe nobody has reviewed, because the author of the crate you're depending on might have had a look at its dependencies, maybe he didn't. So actually you don't know. Everything you usually have is the download numbers. So enter crev. And maybe at this time it's a good point for a disclaimer. I didn't write this. Actually didn't even contribute any code to it. I'm just a user of it who is very interested in having it, because for me it means that I can start looking into the pieces of code that I'm shipping with my deployments that nobody so far had a deeper look at except for the authors. cargo-crev is a tool to do structured code reviews. So every time you look at someone else's code, you can review it in a way that is signed, so cryptographically authenticated, that can be published and that can be machine readable, so that others can use it. Let's look into the details of how this is done. So when you review a crate, you're presented with a form, and this asks you very, very simple questions, I'm sure you can answer. This is, how thorough did you review that? How thoroughly did you review that? Was it just glimpsing over it? That's fine as well. That's valuable information for everyone who will later be using this. How well do you understand it? If it's cryptographic code, you might want to state a little lower understanding unless you're into it, unless you really know what you're saying there. So this gives a kind of two-dimensional grid where you can line yourself. And the final verdict of, is this good, is this not good? And possibly a comment that would give additional information to people who actually read the review, but most of the time people will just use it as a summary. Those reviews are then machine-readably used when you verify your dependency trees. So the cargo-crev verify is the usual way to do this, and it shows you lots of information. It shows you whether that dependency, and by the way, this is this whole list here is just the tree from before in a flattened form. So it doesn't care about how deep your dependency is in your tree. It just shows that this is something that you include in your build. It shows whether it passes the regular requirements, so whether there are any positive reviews. So like the top 1% encoding, it shows whether it's whether the review is about the latest version or about an older one, so that you might want to review just the changes between back then and what's in there now. It shows issues that people raised, and this is particularly interesting because it doesn't only show or this is usually serious issues like security problems with safety and stuff. Not only those that were raised by the people you trust, but also by people you might not even know, but were somehow get in there. I'll come later to where the reviews came from in general. It also shows about things about whether there's a custom build script or not happening here, whether there's any unsafe code involved. The last possibly interesting line is this one. Usually the reviews relate to a particular version. When you're developing right now, you usually don't work on a released version. So this just says there are no reviews, but hey, this is a work in progress thing. So this is what you're working on. When you did reviews, you can share them. This is happening using Git. So the easiest workflow is just you create your key, you start reviewing, you push it, other people pull it. This is all managed by cargo-crev. The cryptographic part is managed by cargo-crev as well. So when you start it up, you create an ID, it creates a key for you, it encrypts the key for you locally, it tells you to please backup it, and it adds information about what is your public key into the final repository you're publishing. And last but not least, the connecting part. That's right. There's two kinds of things you can state with your reviews. One is, I've looked at this piece of software and this looks good or bad. The other is, there is this other reviewer. I want to use their reviews and I want to trust their reviews. Again, you state whether you fully trust them or whether you have kind of marginal trust or you don't trust them at all, but you can state that. The default model that's used by cargo-crev is a transitive model. So if you trust someone to review crates, you also trust them to trust other people, which gives you a network of people. So by the time you actually start verifying your code, chances are that several of the crates you have in there have already been reviewed by someone. In parallel to your trust network, there's also a public list of published proof repositories, which is what feeds the issues counters in the first few slides up. So you may not trust those reviews, but if they raise issues that you want to know about, you might want to know about them even if you don't know that person. So that's the kind of quick tour of what it does. Now let's briefly look into how it works or how you can use it. This is basically repeating the installation instructions I already pasted in the metrics channel. Now the first thing you usually do when you installed crev is that you create your ID. Cargo-crev is relatively tightly integrated with that Git publishing process, so currently you can't even create a new ID without having a repository that you will later publish it into. There's certainly some room for improvement, but it does fit the regular workflow. If you don't just create a new repository, but clone one from the ones that I've linked here, and which I'll also quickly paste over to the channel, then those will show up in the public lists. So if anyone is fetching your repositories and fetching all repositories and looking for where has ever someone reviewed that particular crate, and maybe if that review is good, I start giving them a little trust, then just fork from there, and this will make sure that that those pages keep track of where those repositories are. Now that you have your ID, you can start trusting people. So this line will put trust in whatever I've published. Not that I particularly recommend that because you don't know me, but with people whom you trust, you can do this. You can also enter the cryptographic identifiers that come with the repositories there. But this way it's a bit easier and you find the right address for fetching right away, and it still shows you the ID. So if you want to do fingerprint comparison, you can do that. Then you'll need to fetch information. So this will not only fetch from your trusted network, which would be cargo-crev fetch trusted, but fetch from everything that's known, included the ones you trust. And when you then in your repository run cargo-crev crate verify, you'll get that very list I showed you earlier of all the crates you're depending on, which of them have been reviewed, which of them have known issues, which of them haven't been reviewed in quite a while. And if you tune up additional options, you'll also see how often has this been downloaded. So if this is a crate that isn't really all that widely used, it might be a good idea to start reviewing that because it just hasn't gotten so many eyes on it. You will, and I think that will be true for any non-trivial project at the current states of affairs, sorry, have several crates that have not been reviewed by anyone. And I'd invite you to just have a look at one of those crates and review it. And you can spend seconds on every file. Just skim through it. Okay, does this kind of look plausible? There will be an option in the final review form to say that my thoroughness was practically none, and this is still some input that others can work from. Someone had their eyes on it, as opposed to, well, don't know. When you start reviews, maybe this is something that I should warn you about because it confused me in the first place. When you use cargo-crev go to whichever crate, it goes into subshell. So it changes directory right to where you can inspect that crate, and it sets everything up that when you later say cargo-crev review, it just opens an editor and you can work from that. But you're still in the subshell, so you might later want to exit from that. And if that's all done and to your satisfaction, cargo-crev repo publish will push your repository with all the proofs you've created, with all the trust proofs you've created, back up to the repository you originally specified. And yeah, everyone gets another review or another set of input data to build a bit more trust in the crates they're using. So that's basically it from my part. I've assembled a few links that would get you further. There's a very good getting started guide that essentially says what I'm saying here, maybe in a different sequence, but things are there, and the program itself is documented, and the author is very happy to accept pull requests. Questions so far? Oh, okay, none here. I mean, I'll be around later anyway in the Jitsi rooms, but if you have any questions that come up now, maybe this can be interesting to everyone. Okay then, thank you, and see you later in the Jitsi rooms.
Right, seems like there weren't many questions. Yeah, like Chris said, feel free to ask him in the chat later. He will be around. Cool. Thank you very much, Chris. I hope this will get some traction. This is a really cool project. Like getting a web of trust bootstrapped is always hard, but you know, somebody has to do the first step. Yeah, cool. So people in the chat seem really happy. That's cool. All right. Then if there are really no other questions from the chat, I will propose that we switch it over. So our next speaker is Arcieri. He is a member of the Secure Code RustSec group, and he's actually dialing in today from all over the US West Coast. And so we're very glad to have him talk about cargo-audit today, and maybe a bit about the Rust Security Advisory Database. So Tony, please take it away.
All right. Can you hear me there? Sound good? Let me try sharing my screen. Is that showing up? Let's see. Everything look good there? Hopefully. Fortunately, I can't really see anything else when I'm in presenter mode, so I'm going to hope for the best. If not, just ping me on Riot. So yeah, I'm Tony Arcieri, and this talk is about RustSec, the Rust Security Advisory Database. So a little bit about the project. You can find the project's website at rustsec.org. Some notable things about it. It's a project of the Rust Secure Code Working Group. This is an official working group that mainly does RustSec, but also has a project called the Safety Dance to audit crates for unsound usages of unsafe, and potentially places that unsafe code could be replaced with safe code at no cost. But the main thing to know about it is cargo-audit. This is a tool for auditing for security vulnerabilities in Rust projects. It does that by consuming cargo lock. To install it, you cargo install cargo-audit. Or if you want a cool new kind of experimental feature that will automatically attempt to fix security vulnerabilities in your project, add this -- features fix argument when you're installing. I'll have a demo of it later, but first I just wanted to talk about the Security Advisory Database itself. So it consists of, I think, about 85 vulnerabilities right now, tracked all the way back to 2016. Each of them have this sort of CVE-like RustSec identifier for each advisory. People have also been filing CVEs for all of these, so many of them have a CVE available as well. Each of the advisories looks kind of like this. So it has the advisory ID, the crate name, what the vulnerability was, when it happened, a rough description of what went wrong, and which things have been patched. So you can find the entire advisory DB. It's just a GitHub project full of static files. So to file an advisory, you just file a pull request against this Git repository. Right now, each of the advisories are in this TOML format, so it's pretty simple. basically has all that same information you saw on the previous page. A little bit of history about the project. So it started out in 2016 as this RFC, unmerged, with the basic idea that crates.io should probably track this behavior. And the response we got from the Rust core team at the time was perhaps we should develop something out of tree and prove it out. So that's basically what we did, and it has now been incorporated into this official Rust working group called the Secure Code Working Group that I mentioned earlier. So now I want to give you a quick demo of how cargo-audit works. Let me try to switch over to a terminal here. Let's see, hopefully you can see that. If not, ping me in Riot, but hopefully it's all working. So I'm going to run, I have an example Rust project here. I'm going to run cargo-audit. So what it has found is there is this vulnerable crate included in the project. It's actually that same one I used as an example earlier. Something else interesting is it also has warnings for crates that are presently unmaintained. So these aren't tracked as vulnerabilities, they're just tracked as unmaintained crates. They're surfaced as warnings, but we do track this information as well, just to allow people to know if they're using unmaintained crates within their project. So now that I've run all that, what I'm going to do is run cargo audit fix, which will hopefully automatically fix that security vulnerability. And so you see this at the bottom. It is attempting to fix this, and so it upgraded this dependency to a non-vulnerable version to where if we run cargo audit again, all we've got now is that unmaintained crate. Just really quickly hop in here and comment out that unmaintained crate and regenerate the whole log file. Should be green now. All right, so that's all I got. So hopefully that was a quick whirlwind tour of cargo audit, and thank you for listening. I guess I'll take any questions now.
We didn't have any questions yet, except a comment that people will enable this by default in their CI.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good thing to throw in CI. There is a Actions RS project, if you happen to use GitHub, that has already made action to run this against your project. I recommend cronning it, so you just run it like once a day or once a week, and then it'll automatically spot vulnerabilities when they pop up.
Cool. Another question that popped up was, when is a crate no longer deemed maintained?
So we open issues for each of these crates kind of as they pop up. We usually try to get the consent of a crate author. So if there is already an existing issue where the crate author explicitly says that the crate is unmaintained, that's like our main signal. If people archive the GitHub project, that's like another thing we look at. And otherwise, if there's just been like an issue open for years where we haven't heard from the author or something like that, right? That's another time we might consider the crate unmaintained. So yeah, something that is lacking right now is we don't really have a well spelled out formal policy for all this stuff, and that's something we definitely like to work on and address.
Cool. Yeah, there were a few follow-up questions, which I think
Yeah.
Another question by Stefan is if there's an automated image.
There is not an automated image. That would be really cool if we got this into like a RustUp or something. So you could install it as like a RustUp component or something like that. Unfortunately, there's not now. There is a open issue kind of tracking that sort of thing on cargo-audit. It's definitely something we'd like to address. Looks like there's one more question there. How the database is maintained and how often it updates. So it's maintained by members of the Secure Code Working Group who just kind of review, approve, and merge these PRs. And updates happen whenever vulnerabilities are found. So we just track vulnerabilities crate by crate, vuln by vuln, and update whenever people publish them. It looks like there's one more question, a dry run option for fix. That would be, it doesn't exist now, but it would be an extremely easy thing for someone to contribute. The fix feature is built on top of a crate called cargo-edit. Cargo-edit does have a dry run parameter you can pass into the function we're calling. There just isn't a command line flag to kind of wire it up right now to actually pass that. The parrot is a half Myers, half Senecal parrot. Very cool. That's all the questions.
Cool. I believe there's no more questions. Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, Tony, for taking time. Much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Yeah, more comments about the parrot in the chat, but there. Yeah, cool. Thanks for dropping by. I'm sure people can ping you as well via Twitter or via Matrix if they have more questions.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, this concludes the second talk.
All right.
So bye.
All right.